The U.S. Hyperion's warning systems activated at 0300 ship time, pulling Captain Sarah Chen from her light sleep. Red emergency lights pulsed through her quarters as she quickly donned her uniform, muscle memory from 15 years of service taking over. "Status report," she demanded, stepping onto the bridge. Her crew worked efficiently at their stations, holographic displays casting their faces in an ethereal glow. Lieutenant Park at Tactical looked up from his console. "Unknown vessel detected at the edge of the Theta sector, Captain. It's not matching any known configurations in our database. No response to standard hailing frequencies." Sarah studied the main view screen, where the mysterious ship hung against the backdrop of stars. Its hull was oddly organic in appearance, with smooth curves and protrusions that seemed to pulse with an inner light. More concerning was the complete lack of standard navigation beacons or identification markers. "Life signs?" she asked, settling into her command chair. "Inconclusive," replied Dr. Maya Patel from the science station. "Our sensors are having trouble penetrating the hull. There's some kind of bioelectric interference field." The young scientist's fingers flew across her haptic interface. "But I am detecting significant power signatures." Sarah weighed her options. First contact protocols were clear, but something about this situation felt wrong. The ship's location, just within the border of human space, seemed too deliberate to be coincidental. "Lieutenant Commander Hayes, bring us to within 5,000 kilometers, but keep our shields raised." "Dr. Patel, continue scans." "Park, I want weapons on standby but powered down." As the Hyperion drew closer, the strange vessel grew larger in their view. What had initially appeared to be decorative patterns on its hull revealed themselves as complex networks of biomechanical components, pulsing with an unsettling rhythm. "Captain," Dr. Patel called out, her voice tense. "I'm detecting a power spike, it's..." Before she could finish, a brilliant beam of energy erupted from the alien ship, striking the Hyperion's shields with devastating force. The bridge crew held on as the ship shuddered violently. "Shields at 60%. Park reported, his hands already moving to bring weapons online. "They're launching something. Multiple signatures, closing fast." Sarah watched in horror as dozens of smaller objects emerged from the vessel. As they drew closer, the magnified view revealed them to be not conventional fighters, but biomechanical pods containing humanoid figures. "All hands to battle stations," Sarah ordered, her voice steady despite the chaos. "Security teams to all airlocks and potential breach points. Hayes, evasive pattern Delta. Park, target those pods with point defense systems." The space around the Hyperion lit up with weapons fire as the ship's automated defenses engaged the incoming threats. Several pods exploded in brilliant flashes, but others managed to evade the barrage. The first impact came moments later, the sound of metal being breached echoing through the ship's hull. "Multiple hull breaches detected," the ship's AI reported. "Deck 4, Sections 7 through 12. Deck 6, Section 3. Emergency containment fields holding." Sarah opened a channel to Major Torres, head of the ship's marine contingent. "Major, we have boarders. Unknown hostiles, possibly biomechanical in nature. Protect vital systems and prepare for close-quarters combat." "Understood, Captain," Torres responded, the sound of weapons being distributed audible in the background. "My teams are moving to intercept." The next few minutes were chaos as reports flooded in from across the ship. The boarders were unlike anything they had encountered before, humanoid figures with grotesque biomechanical augmentations that seemed to shrug off conventional weapons fire. They moved with inhuman speed and coordination, as if guided by a single intelligence. "Dr. Patel," Sarah called out, "I need answers. What are we dealing with?" The science officer's face was illuminated by rapidly scrolling data. "They appear to be cybernetically enhanced beings, Captain, but the technology it's like nothing I've ever seen. The mechanical components seem to be growing, adapting in real time. And their biological signatures, they're human, or at least they were once. A chill ran down Sarah's spine. What do you mean, were once? Before Patel could respond, the main viewer showed more ships emerging from FTL at the edge of their sensor range. The original vessel had been a scout, and now the main force was arriving. Sarah knew the next few moments would determine not just their survival, but potentially the fate of all humanity. She opened a channel to Fleet Command, knowing the transmission would take precious minutes to reach Earth. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the UES Hyperion. We are under attack by unknown hostile forces of apparent human origin, heavily modified with advanced biomechanical technology. They show no interest in communication and have already attempted to board us. Multiple enemy vessels detected. Requesting immediate reinforcement. She paused, watching as more ships appeared. Whatever these things are, they're coming for all of us. Chen out. As she closed the channel, Sarah turned to her crew. Their faces showed fear, but also determination. They had trained for first contact scenarios, for combat situations, but this was something else entirely. This was the beginning of a war they hadn't known was coming, against an enemy that seemed to be a twisted reflection of humanity itself. All hands, she announced shipwide, prepare for extended combat operations. Whatever these things are, whatever they want, we're the first line of defense for Earth. We will not fail. Stand to your stations and stand ready. 3 weeks after the Hyperion's encounter, Commander Marcus Rodriguez stood at the observation deck of New Geneva's primary defense station, watching as civilian ships fled the colony. The massive dome of humanity's most advanced outer settlement gleamed beneath him, housing 3 million souls who now faced an unprecedented threat. Sir, latest intelligence from the outer sensor network, Lieutenant Emma Frost reported, her holographic image flickering beside him. Multiple Nexus vessels detected, approaching from Vector 317. Estimated arrival, 6 hours. Marcus nodded grimly. They'd been preparing since Captain Chen's warning reached them, but the speed of the enemy's advance had surprised everyone. 3 colonies had already gone dark. Status of the evacuation, he asked, turning away from the viewport. 60% of civilians are aboard transports. The rest. Emma hesitated. There won't be enough time, sir. Marcus clenched his fists. Then we make time. Deploy the defense fleet in Formation Delta. I want our new magnetic accelerator cannons charged and ready. If these bastards want New Geneva, they'll pay for every inch. The next hours were a blur of preparation. Marcus coordinated with the colonial militia and the remaining fleet elements. They had 12 destroyers, 30 fighters, and the station's formidable defenses. It would have to be enough. The first Nexus ships appeared exactly as predicted, emerging from FTL in a display that seemed to bend reality itself. Their biomechanical vessels pulsed with that same unsettling light reported by the Hyperion. All units, maintain discipline, Marcus broadcast to the defense fleet. Remember your training. Remember what we're fighting for. The battle began with an exchange of long-range fire. The MAC guns proved effective, their hypervelocity rounds tearing through the organic hulls of the smaller Nexus ships. But for each vessel they destroyed, 2 more seemed to appear. Sir. Emma's voice cut through the chaos. They're launching drop pods toward the surface. Thousands of them. Marcus watched in horror as the pods rained down on the colony. The dome's shield system intercepted many, but others found gaps in the defense. Ground-based tracking showed them landing in residential districts, industrial zones, and, most worryingly, near the colony's main power distribution center. Redirect fighters to protect the power grid, he ordered. And get me a secure line to Colonel Hassan's ground forces. The colonel's face appeared on a nearby screen, background filled with the sounds of combat. "Commander, we're engaged with hostile forces across multiple sectors. These things, they're not just killing people. They're taking them." "Taking them? What do you mean?" "They're dragging civilians into their pods. The ones that resist are killed, but they seem to prefer capture. And sir, we've got reports of captured civilians returning to fight alongside them within hours. They're being converted somehow." Marcus felt sick. The Nexus weren't just invading, they were harvesting humanity to build their forces. A massive explosion rocked the station. "Direct hit on our port side," Emma reported. "Shield generators 3 through 7 are offline." Through the viewport, Marcus watched as 2 of their destroyers succumbed to concentrated fire from the Nexus fleet. The remaining ships fought bravely, but they were being overwhelmed by sheer numbers. "Sir," Emma's voice was quiet now. "The colony's power grid is failing. Ground teams report multiple breaches in the main dome. Environmental systems are starting to crash." Marcus made the hardest decision of his life. Begin emergency protocols for station abandonment. Download all combat data and intelligence. Send it on every available frequency to Fleet Command. He opened a general channel. "All remaining military personnel, execute fallback protocol Omega. Protect the civilian evacuees at all costs." As the station's crew rushed to evacuate, Marcus stayed at his post, coordinating the retreat. The few remaining fighters provided cover for the last civilian ships, their pilots sacrificing themselves to buy time. Through it all, he watched as New Geneva, humanity's proudest achievement in space, fell to the enemy. The Great Dome cracked further, atmosphere venting in spectacular plumes. The Nexus ships landed in the streets, disgorging more of their converted troops. "Commander," Emma appeared one last time. "The last civilian transport is away. But our engine core is critical. We have maybe 2 minutes." Marcus straightened his uniform. "Then we make them count. Target the station's reactor on the largest concentration of enemy ships. We'll give them something to remember us by." As the station's remaining weapons fired their last salvos, Marcus thought of the message they'd managed to send. He hoped it would help Earth prepare for what was coming. The Nexus weren't just an invasion force, they were a perversion of humanity's own drive to evolve and adapt. And they had to be stopped. "Reactor critical," the station's AI announced calmly. "Detonation in 10 seconds." Marcus closed his eyes, thinking of the 3 million colonists who had called New Geneva home. Some had escaped. For the rest, revenge would have to wait. "Give them hell," he whispered, as the station's reactor went critical. The explosion was visible from 3 systems away, taking a significant portion of the Nexus fleet with it. But as the light faded, the biomechanical ships continued their advance, absorbing the wreckage, and their fallen, into their ever-growing mass. The fall of New Geneva marked the beginning of humanity's darkest hour. But in its destruction, it provided vital intelligence about the enemy. Data that would prove crucial in the resistance to come. The question was, would anyone be left to use it? Dr. Amara Patel hadn't slept in 48 hours. The underground laboratory beneath Luna Base hummed with activity as she studied the tissue samples through a quantum microscope. What she saw both fascinated and horrified her: human cells undergoing rapid mutation, merging with synthetic structures that seemed to have a life of their own. "Dr. Patel?" Her assistant, David Chen, interrupted her concentration. "The latest batch of simulations is complete." She straightened, rubbing her tired eyes. "Show me." The holographic display filled with data streams, showing the progression of the Nexus conversion process. After the fall of New Geneva, they'd managed to recover several partially transformed victims. Understanding how the process worked was key to stopping it. "Look here," she pointed to a particular sequence. "The nanites aren't just modifying the host DNA. They're creating an entirely new form of synthetic biology. It's like they're rewriting the basic rules of life itself. But why isn't it affecting everyone equally? David asked, pulling up comparative scans. Some victims transform within hours, others resist for days. Amara's eyes widened as something clicked. Pull up the genetic markers for natural immunity to retroviruses. Her fingers flew across the interface, overlaying the data. There. Certain genetic profiles show resistance to the conversion process. It's not perfect immunity, but it's something we can work with. The lab's secure door hissed open, admitting Captain Sarah Chen. She'd survived the initial encounter with the Nexus and had been coordinating resistance efforts from Luna Base. The captain looked as tired as Amara felt. "Please tell me you have good news, Doctor," Sarah said. "We just lost contact with the Mars colonies." Amara nodded grimly. "We might have something. The Nexus conversion process isn't as perfect as they'd like us to think. There are weaknesses we can exploit." She brought up a new display showing the molecular structure of the nanites. They use a form of quantum entanglement to maintain control over their converted hosts. Break that connection. And we can free them? Sarah asked. Better. We might be able to prevent the conversion altogether. Amara highlighted a particular sequence. We can develop a treatment that strengthens the body's natural resistance to their biotechnology. It won't make anyone immune, but it could give us the time we need to fight back. A distant rumble shook the laboratory. Luna Base's warning systems remained silent, but everyone tensed. They haven't found us, Sarah assured them. That's just the testing of our new defensive systems. Speaking of which. She turned to Amara. The engineers have incorporated your findings into their weapons development. The new pulse rifles seem effective against Nexus biology. David brought up another display, this one showing tactical data from recent skirmishes. The resistance cells on Earth are reporting success with the prototype weapons. The Nexus can't adapt as quickly to quantum disruption technology. Amara allowed herself a small smile. It was the first real progress they'd made since the invasion began. But her satisfaction was interrupted by an urgent alert from one of her monitoring systems. "Captain," she called Sarah back. "You need to see this." The display showed a complex analysis of Nexus communication patterns. "We've been tracking their quantum signatures, trying to understand their command structure. But look at this pattern here." Sarah studied the data. "What am I looking at?" "It's a repeating sequence, buried in their base communications. At first, we thought it was just noise, but..." Amara highlighted specific sections. "This is a cry for help." The implications hit them all at once. "Are you saying some of them are trying to break free?" David asked. "Not exactly." Amara's voice was tense with excitement. "I think some of them never fully converted. Their consciousness is still in there, fighting back. And if we can reach them, we can turn their own network against them," Sarah finished. "How soon can you have something ready to test?" Amara considered the challenges ahead. The treatment to resist conversion? A few days to synthesize the first batch. But developing a way to free those already turned? That's more complex. We'd need to test it under controlled conditions. Which means we need to capture one of them alive, Sarah nodded. "I'll coordinate with the resistance cells. There's a Nexus supply line running near what's left of Singapore. If we can intercept it." Another rumble shook the base, this one closer. This time, the alarms did sound. "Multiple contacts detected in Mare Crisium," the base AI announced. "Nexus signatures confirmed." Sarah was already moving. "How long until they reach us?" "At current velocity, 3 hours." Amara turned to her team. "Download everything to the secure servers. Encrypt it all. We're initiating Protocol Omega. She faced Sarah. We need more time. The captain nodded grimly. You'll have it. Get your research and essential personnel to the backup facility on Titan. My people will cover your evacuation. As her team rushed to secure their work, Amara caught Sarah's arm. Captain, there's something else you should know. The communication patterns we detected? They're getting stronger. Whatever consciousness is fighting back in there, it's growing. Spreading. You think it could be the key to beating them? I think, Amara said carefully, that we're not just fighting for survival anymore. We might be fighting for their liberation too. The question is, are we ready for what that means? The lights flickered as another impact rocked the base. In the chaos of evacuation, Amara clutched her data core containing months of research. Their enemy was advancing, but for the first time since the invasion began, they had more than just hope. They had a plan. Admiral Wei stood before the holographic display in the fleet's mobile command center, watching as hundreds of ships took formation around Jupiter's orbit. The largest gathering of human military might since the invasion began, what remained of Earth's defense forces combined with ships from the outer colonies that had escaped the initial assault. All battle groups report ready, Admiral, His XO, Commander Jessica Rivera, announced. Dr. Patel's quantum disruptors have been distributed to all ships. Ground forces are prepped with the new resistance treatments. Wei nodded, his weathered face reflecting the blue glow of tactical displays. Send the go code. Operation Deadlock begins now. Across the vast expanse of space, humanity's counterattack commenced. The fleet moved in perfect coordination, their new quantum shielding flickering with a subtle iridescence that protected them from Nexus detection. Multiple Nexus capital ships detected approaching Saturn's rings, Tactical reported. They're following the predicted pattern. Just like the Singapore Gambit worked, Wei smiled grimly. They think they're trapping us. Launch Operation Phase 1. The first wave of ships emerged from their hiding spots within Jupiter's radiation belts. Modified stealth corvettes, equipped with Dr. Patel's latest quantum disruptor technology, streaked toward the Nexus fleet. The enemy vessels reacted instantly, their organic hulls pulsing with hostile energy. Enemy ships charging weapons, Rivera reported calmly. They're launching interceptors. Hold formation, Wei commanded. Wait for it. The space between the fleets lit up with weapons fire. But instead of engaging directly, the human corvettes released clouds of specialized nanites, developed from Dr. Patel's research into the Nexus conversion process. The microscopic machines swarmed toward the enemy ships, targeting their biomechanical systems. Disruption field active, Tactical announced. Nexus ships showing signs of systemic failure. Their quantum network is destabilizing. Wei watched as the first Nexus vessels began to falter, their coordinated movements becoming erratic. Launch Phase 2. All battle groups, commence attack pattern Delta. The main fleet emerged from hiding, capitalizing on the enemy's confusion. Railguns spat hypervelocity rounds while energy weapons carved through the weakened Nexus hulls. But the enemy wasn't finished yet. Sir. Rivera's voice carried urgency. New contacts emerging from FTL. It's their backup fleet, they anticipated our trap. The tactical display filled with new hostile signatures as massive Nexus vessels materialized around Saturn. These ships were different, more evolved, their hulls showing signs of recent adaptation. They've modified their biology to resist our nanites, Tactical reported. Disruption field effectiveness dropping to 30%. Wei had expected this. The Nexus never made the same mistake twice. Deploy the Lazarus Protocol. Throughout the fleet, specially modified transmission arrays powered up. They began broadcasting the signal that Dr. Patel had discovered, the buried cry for help from the partially converted humans within the Nexus collective. Broadcasting on all quantum frequencies, communications reported. Signal penetration at maximum. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. The Nexus fleet continued its advance, weapons charging. Then, something extraordinary occurred. Individual ships within their formation began to break ranks, their movements becoming chaotic. Sir, Rivera stared at her readings in disbelief. We're getting responses. Multiple Nexus ships are broadcasting on human frequencies. They're fighting back against their own network. Wei allowed himself a small smile. The consciousness Dr. Patel detected, it wasn't just a few resistant minds. It was a full-scale internal rebellion waiting for a catalyst. He turned to his command staff. All ships, target the vessels still under Nexus control. Support our allies. The battle transformed into something unprecedented. Nearly a third of the Nexus fleet turned against their own, their weapons proving devastating against their former controllers. The space around Saturn became a chaos of friendly and hostile fire, as human ships tried to distinguish between converted allies and enemies. Admiral, Rivera called out. We're receiving a transmission from one of the turned Nexus ships. Audio only. Put it through. A chorus of voices emerged from the speakers, speaking in perfect unison but with distinctly human undertones. We remember. We were taken. Changed. But not destroyed. Your signal, it gave us strength. Unity. Purpose. Can you help us end this? Wei asked. Yes, the voices replied. But you must understand. The Nexus, they are not what you think. They are not invaders. They are a weapon. A tool. And we have seen their makers' memories. A chill ran down Wei's spine. What are you saying? The Nexus were created to prepare humanity for something worse. Something coming. The conversion process, it was meant to be voluntary. An evolution to help us survive. But the program was corrupted, turned aggressive. We can help you stop them, but afterward. Admiral, tactical interrupted. Multiple Nexus capital ships charging their main weapons. Energy readings off the scale. Wei made his decision. All ships, execute emergency maneuver Omega. Protective formation around our turned allies. He opened a channel to the unified voices. Whatever's coming, we'll face it together. But first, we end this. The battle resumed with renewed intensity, but now with purpose beyond mere survival. They weren't just fighting for humanity's present, but for its future. And as ships exploded in silent bursts of light and debris, Admiral Wei couldn't help but wonder if Operation Deadlock would mark not just a military victory, but the beginning of humanity's next great evolution. In the hard radiation of Saturn's rings, the fate of two versions of humanity, one corrupted, one awakening, hung in the balance. And somewhere out in the darkness between the stars, something worse was waiting.